What if your biggest financial problem isn't your salary, but your programming? Most people spend their lives believing they're chasing wealth. In reality, they're chasing permission. Permission to spend, permission to dream, permission to succeed. Machiavelli understood a truth that still governs the modern world. The easiest way to control people is not through force. It is by shaping what they believe is possible. And when it comes to money, most people have been conditioned to think small long before they ever earn their first paycheck. The tragedy is that they don't even realize it. Because the strongest prison has no bars. It exists inside the mind. People often believe poverty begins when money runs out. But poverty begins much earlier. It begins the moment someone accepts limitation as reality. From childhood, we are taught how to avoid mistakes, how to seek security, how to obey instructions, how to fit in. These lessons may create stability, but they rarely create freedom. No one tells you that the safest path is often the most crowded, and crowded paths almost never lead to extraordinary outcomes. Machiavelli believed that power belongs to those who understand the rules beneath the surface. Money works the same way. Most people only see the visible game. Work, earn, spend, repeat. But beneath that cycle lies another game entirely, a psychological game. The people who build wealth think differently long before they earn differently. They stop asking, "How can I make more money?" and start asking, "What kind of person consistently creates value?" That question changes everything, because money follows behavior, and behavior follows identity. If you see yourself as someone who is always struggling, your decisions will quietly protect that identity. You will hesitate when opportunity appears. You will avoid calculated risks. You will seek comfort instead of growth. Not because you lack intelligence, but because your mind is trying to remain consistent with the story it already believes. This is why changing your income without changing your mindset rarely changes your life. Money can increase your lifestyle. It cannot automatically increase your discipline. Without self-control, more income often leads to more spending, more debt, more pressure. The problem was never the amount of money. It was the psychology controlling it. Think about how modern society measures success. A bigger house, a newer car, designer clothes, luxury watches. None of these are inherently wrong, but they become dangerous when they are purchased to impress people instead of creating freedom. The world has become obsessed with looking wealthy. Very few people are focused on becoming wealthy. There is a difference. One requires appearance, the other requires patience. And patience is something modern culture constantly discourages. Every advertisement tells you to buy now. Every social platform encourages comparison. Every trend whispers the same message. You are behind. That feeling is incredibly profitable because people who feel inadequate spend emotionally, and emotional spending creates emotional dependence. The marketplace understands human psychology better than most. People understand themselves. It knows that fear sells, status sells, urgency sells. So it constantly stimulates your emotions until buying feels like relief. But relief is temporary. Freedom is permanent. The wealthy learn to delay relief in exchange for lasting control. Most people do the opposite. They sacrifice long-term freedom for short-term comfort, one impulse at a time. The greatest financial trap is not low income. It is high consumption. Someone earning twice your salary can still be financially imprisoned if every dollar disappears as quickly as it arrives. Meanwhile, someone earning less but living intentionally may quietly build lasting wealth. This is why discipline is more valuable than income. Income creates opportunity. Discipline determines whether that opportunity survives. Machiavelli understood that every form of power requires self-mastery. A leader who cannot control his emotions loses influence. A ruler who cannot resist temptation loses authority. And an individual who cannot control spending will always remain dependent on the next paycheck. Real power begins the moment your decisions stop being controlled by your impulses, because every purchase asks a hidden question. Are you buying value, or are you buying validation? Most people never answer honestly. Instead, they convince themselves that another possession will finally make them feel successful. But success is never purchased. It is built quietly, patiently, repeatedly. And while the world competes for attention, the truly strategic person competes for freedom. That is the difference between appearing rich and becoming impossible to control. There is another reason why so many people remain financially stuck. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with fear. Not the fear of failure, the fear of becoming different. Because the moment you stop following the crowd, you also stop receiving its approval. And for most people, approval feels safer than independence. That is exactly where the invisible programming becomes strongest. Not in your bank account, but in your need to belong. The moment you begin thinking differently about money, you also begin separating yourself from the crowd. And that is where most people stop. Not because they lack ability, but because they fear isolation. Machiavelli understood that the majority rarely questions the system. They were raised inside. People defend what feels familiar, even when that familiarity keeps them trapped. Financial programming works the same way. If everyone around you believes wealth is reserved for the lucky, eventually you believe it too. If everyone spends everything they earn, saving begins to feel strange. If debt becomes normal, financial discipline starts to look extreme. The greatest prison is not built by governments or institutions. It is built by repeated ideas that slowly become your identity. That is why changing your financial future requires more than earning more money. It requires changing the way you think, because every action begins with a belief, and every belief eventually becomes a habit. Look closely at the people who quietly build wealth. They are rarely the loudest. They rarely feel the need to prove themselves. While others spend money to create an image, they spend time creating value. They understand something the average person ignores. Money is a tool, not an identity. The moment you attach your self-worth to what you own, you become easy to manipulate. You start buying approval instead of freedom. You compare your life to people you don't know. You measure success through appearances instead of progress, and without realizing it, you hand control of your decisions to everyone except yourself. True wealth works differently. It grows in silence. It doesn't need constant validation. It doesn't demand attention. It demands patience. That is why so many wealthy people appear calm. Their confidence does not come from possessions. It comes from knowing they have built something that cannot disappear overnight. A disciplined mind, skills that create value, the ability to remain rational while everyone else reacts emotionally. That is real security. Not the size of a paycheck, but the strength of your character. Think about how many financial decisions are made because of emotion. People buy when they feel insecure, spend when they feel stressed, consume when they feel bored, and celebrate success with things they cannot afford. Then they wonder why money never stays. Because emotions create temporary satisfaction, but habits create permanent results. Every impulsive decision teaches your brain the same lesson. Comfort now, consequences later. Unfortunately, later always arrives, and when it does, most people blame the economy, their job, their luck, almost never their own patterns. Machiavelli believed that power begins with responsibility. The moment you stop blaming circumstances, you regain control over your future. That does not mean life is always fair. It isn't. Some people begin with more opportunities than others. But regardless of where you start, your daily choices determine the direction you move. Small decisions repeated consistently are far more powerful than dramatic changes made once. Read instead of scrolling. Invest instead of impressing. Learn instead of complaining. Save instead of consuming. None of these choices feel extraordinary in the moment, but years later, they produce an extraordinary life. That is how wealth is really built, quietly, one disciplined decision at a time. The world wants your attention because attention eventually becomes action. Action becomes habit, and habit becomes destiny. If you constantly feed your mind with comparison, you will always feel behind. If you constantly chase comfort, growth will always feel painful. If you constantly seek approval, you will never make the decisions required for freedom. The most dangerous investment is not a bad business. It is investing your life in beliefs that were never truly yours. Ask yourself, who taught you what money means? Who convinced you that security was more important than independence? Who decided what success should look like? If you have never questioned those answers, then someone else has been writing the script for your life. Machiavelli would remind us that those who control the narrative often control the outcome. The question is, who is writing yours? Every day, your habits cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Every unnecessary expense, every disciplined investment, every hour spent learning, every moment you resist impulse. You are either reinforcing the programming that keeps you average or building the mindset that creates freedom. There is no neutral decision. Everything compounds. Your excuses compound. Your discipline compounds. Your fears compound. And your courage compounds too. One day, people will look at your results and call you fortunate. They will never see the thousands of invisible decisions that created that outcome. Because real wealth is built long before anyone notices it. It is built when no one is watching, when there is no applause, no recognition, only the quiet commitment to become someone who can no longer be controlled by fear, emotion, or appearances. That is the difference between those who spend their lives chasing money and those who eventually make money work for them. In the end, the greatest investment was never your income. It was the way you trained your mind, because once your mind stops thinking like everyone else, your future stops looking like everyone else's. If this video challenged the way you think about money, don't let it become just another piece of information you forget tomorrow. Knowledge changes nothing. Applied knowledge changes everything. So before you leave, ask yourself one question. What is the one financial habit that has been controlling my life? Without me even noticing, change that one habit, and you may begin changing your future. If you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology of power, wealth, discipline, and timeless strategies inspired by Machiavelli and Stoicism, subscribe to the channel. Every week, we uncover the mental frameworks that separate those who follow the crowd from those who quietly build freedom. And remember, most people spend their lives trying to earn more money. The few who become truly free first learn how to master the mind that controls it.